is I didn't know what size parts to get. I didn't know how big of a motor to get, how big of a battery, controller, things like that. You pretty much have to start at the motor, determine how fast you want to go. Now, if you ask me about this car, you know, I can tell you in car language, say, what do you want, a V8, 4-cylinder, a turbo 4-cylinder? Yeah, it all makes sense. If you ask me about a motorcycle, do you want 1,000 or 600 in a sport bike? I know which one I like. If it's a cruiser, you know, I know if I like a 500 or a 1200 or, you know, whatever, a 900. We have a good idea. If it's your first e-bike, you have no clue what size you need. So I just bought the biggest ones they had at the time, 20,000 watt motor, an 1800 amp controller. Hell, I didn't know. So I want to make a video to help you figure out what size you need. How powerful of a motor do you need? They'll have the rated speed. Like I showed before, you can go into Omni wheel speed calculator and you can figure out exactly what speed you want to go. But remember, that's a rated speed. You can exceed that by quite a bit. So like this one has a rated speed advertised of 1670. The software said it was 1382. It really didn't matter. I can go over 2000 RPM with it, so the speed's not a problem. What's cool is, since I got this big controller in here and this big motor, I can use the software in the controller to limit how many amps this battery puts out. And I can limit it down to anything I want. So I can simulate a much smaller motor. Yeah, I bent my blinker here. Look how loose this thing is. There you go. It's the great thing about an e-bike. Stuff can be that loose. No vibration, no rattling, no parts falling off. I've just went to hand tightening everything. Back to the project. You just use Watt's law. You can use your amps and what volts you're running to determine your wheel power. So I can restrict the amps to get the wheel power I desire. And I'm running 96 volts, and that's fine. It doesn't matter what volts you run. Matter of fact, I don't recommend running 96 volts after doing this project. I recommend 72 volts. There's more controllers for it. There's more batteries for it. It's more of a standard. And in the end, all this 96 volt does for me is it lets the motor run cooler because I'm using less amps since I have more volt. Remember the Watt's law. That's about all it's doing for me. You're going to get the same power no matter what volt system you use if you put the right amount of amps through it. So let's say we have an 8,000 watt motor. Well, I divide it by 96 volts. I need 81 amps to make my 8,000 watts. But if you have 72 volt, then you'll need 111 line amps to make your 8,000 watts. So that's the only difference. You're still going to get the 8 kilowatts of performance. So these motors come with a rated power and a peak power. And it's almost a standard online. You'll notice right away that the peak power is 2 times the rated power. You're shopping for a 8,000 watt motor. But we're going to test it at 16,000 watts. So when I limit this motor to 16,000 watts, I'm actually testing an 8,000 watt motor. So keep that in mind. And I'll say that while we're doing it, because I've noticed you really do use these things well above the rated kilowatts. Guys push these motors well beyond 2 times the rated kilowatts. Running at 2 times the kilowatts is very safe, and that's why they recommend that on the spec sheet. So this is a 20,000 watt motor, but they say I'm good for a peak of 40,000 watts. There's guys running this motor at 60, 70,000 watts without issue. But we're going to use the 2 times theory at 2 times the rated power. So that's what we'll test it at. For a 3,000 watt motor, we're going to test it at 6,000 watts to see what you can actually get performance-wise. Let's start testing, and I'm doing this out of curiosity because I'm thinking about building another one of these for my mini bike, but I don't know what size motor to get for my mini bike. I don't want anything this powerful, so I'm gonna figure out what I can live with by limiting my amps and simulating these different motor sizes they sell. For the first test, we'll try the super cheap 1,000 watt hub motor. My handy dandy chart here, that would give me up to 2,000 watts and only take 20 amps to make that. And button 3, that's where you get the maximum amps you assign. We'll set the max amps 20. Oh, 20 by 3, we got 60. Be close enough on the phase. So this simulates a 1,000 watt hub motor. We're limiting ourselves to 2,000 watts. Ready to race. Yeah, that barely goes. That's stupid. Okay, this is probably more for a bicycle or something. The race is on. Yeah, we definitely don't want this one. Okay, that was a quick no. Back to my handy dandy chart. We'll try the 1,500 watt motor, 30 amps. So this will be a 3,000 watt peak. I'm not sure it's going to be much better, but let's do it and see. 30 amps. 30 times 3, we're talking about 90. Okay, let's try this one. 1,500 watt motor test. Oh, that's pretty pathetic. That's just as bad as the other one. It's a little bit better. I guess I could see if you had a pretty lightweight moped. Yeah, you could drive in the neighborhood like this. See what it does on max speed. I wonder what it'll give me. It's probably like those little mopeds that you buy on AliExpress. They have those 1,500 watt motors. They barely go. Yeah, see, I'm doing 25. Hell, I might break the, nope, 28. I might break the speed limit for a moped. Look at that, 30 miles an hour. 31, just got illegal, just broke the limit. Yeah, 32. Yeah, that's about like a stock Mad Dog 50 right there. All right, here's a 2,000 watt motor. So we're limited to 4,000 watts. Go! That's pretty slow on the takeoff. That's a little bit better. Yeah, it kind of feels like a slow golf cart. And this bike, you figure I weigh 200 pounds, a 78 pound motor, 73 pound battery. The bike probably weighs another 150, so yeah, it's a lot of weight. So these motors would be good for a bicycle. They're just too small for this bike here. Just too slow. And it'd be good if you were wanting just moped speeds, but the takeoff is just too slow. Okay, now we've got a 3,000 watt hub motor, so we're limited to 6,000 watts. Ready for the race. Go. Oh, that does take off better. So yeah, I could have one of these for driving around town. That took off pretty nice. Let's see what we get here in the 8th mile. I don't think we'll get to 60 miles an hour, so we won't get a 0 to 60. But we can try to get an 8th mile run going. Yeah, it's pretty nice. It goes pretty fast. 3,000 watts. Yeah, that's not a bad deal. Let's see what we got. Yeah, 8th mile, 18 seconds. Got a 4,000 watt hub motor. We're limited to 8,000 watts peak, and race is on. That took off pretty good. And yeah, it's accelerating pretty quick. Nothing to write home about. We'll see what we get in this one here. Yeah, I'm gonna go 50 miles an hour in this thing. Yeah, easily. Yeah, 50 miles an hour, you can't beat that. 16.9 in the 8th mile. Yeah, 4,000 watt motor, that's pretty cool. 5,000 watt hub motor. Race is on. That takes off nice. Yeah. Now that's about probably the minimum I would want. This thing feels like a real bike. It took off nice and fast. Yeah, and it picks up speed pretty quick too. Yeah, it's going to easily go over 50, probably go 60 miles an hour. 8th mile is 14 seconds. Yeah, that's real good. So I could definitely live with the 5,000 watt hub motor, and that's restricting it to 10,000 watts. All right, now we've got a 6,000 watt motor. We're running 100 and I think 22 amps, 360 phase amps. We're starting to get in the big leagues. And I'm limited to 12,000 watts or 12 kilowatts. Race is on. Yeah, it takes off good. It actually takes off pretty quick. Yeah, this is totally workable. I could definitely have this for my regular bike. It's going to be fast. Yeah, it's going to definitely go like 60 or 70 or something. No big deal. Yeah, 13 seconds and 1/8 of a mile. Yeah, so I think about 6,000 watt motors is where the game starts. That's where they start getting into motorcycles and not bicycles. So anything above 6,000 watts, I think we're golden. Yeah, this is actually very drivable. I would not be afraid to take this 6,000 watt motor on the highway, and we're going to do it. And we're going to kind of give it a top speed run here. My speedometer's on, by the way, so I'm plenty calibrated. Well, I got a stop sign coming up at 54, 56. It gets to 60 pretty quick. Yeah, there's 60 miles an hour, 62, 63. It's still climbing slowly. 64, 60, maybe 64 miles an hour, about a top speed for that 6,000 watt motor. 65. Yeah, it's going to take a long time to get faster than that. So here's an 8,000 watt motor. I think this is going to be a pretty good choice right here. I'm limiting myself to 16 kilowatts, so 16,000 watts. And race is on. Yeah, that's nice. It's got a good fast takeoff. It moves out pretty fast. Yeah, this thing's going to do 70, no problem. Yeah, that's nice. 70 miles an hour comes pretty quick. Yeah, we got the 8th of a mile in 11 seconds. Not bad, not bad. Yeah, the 8,000 watt hub motor, that's a good one. Here's the most popular motor. This is a 12,000 watt hub motor. So we're gonna be able to go to 24,000 watts on this thing. And let's hit it and see what happens. Yeah, that's quick. That's really fast. Okay, this is a super fast bike. I probably won't even be able to top speed it. There's just too many cops out today. Yeah, there's 70 miles an hour right away. Right away. And you can see I got a bum 1/8 of a mile. I'm gonna do that again. This is actually where I like the bike to ride. This is perfect. This is a good fast e-bike, 12,000 watts. And like I say, we're peaking at 24,000 watts, so I just want to get this 8th mile again. Yeah, it moves out. Yeah, I think anyone would be happy with this bike. Yeah, 9.8 in the 8th mile. So that's pretty good. That's getting into like regular cars and stuff like that. This would definitely go with any traffic. Let's do really well. When you start getting into these 12,000 watt and above motors, yeah, don't worry about your top speed. You're gonna get it. There's a guy on a Grom with, I think, a 12,000 watt motor, and he's doing 10-second quarter miles. So we're using, for this test, double the power. So for a 12,000 watt motor, I'm gonna go 24,000 watts max. But he's pushing like, 40,000 watts out of this thing, running the quarter mile in 10 seconds and getting 126 miles an hour. See, I'm not going to do a top-end run on these. I'm just doing these 8th mile runs just to kind of see. So this is a 16,000 watt hub motor now. So that would be pushing it to 32,000 watts. Yeah, it's super fast. So we got there 8.1 in the 8th mile. Pretty darn good. You could push that 16,000 watt motor to no telling what, but we just did 32 kilowatts on it. And this is the motor I have now, a 20,000 watt motor, but I found with my battery I don't get much over 38 kilowatt. Let's see what we get. Let's see what I got on that one. Can't read these little numbers while I'm driving. I'll just throw it up here. Quite a bit faster than the 16,000 watt one at 8.1 seconds. No, it's way faster than the 18,000. I didn't really do a drag race takeoff. So on that, I was running 400 amps on a 20,000 watt motor. These times are real conservative, by the way, compared to what you're going to see. For example, if I showed the 8,000 watt motor doing such and such, I've limited it to double the watts. So I've limited it to 16,000. You can make it run, damn squirrels, don't get out of my way. This electric bike makes no noise. You could make that motor take way more kilowatts if you have the battery for it and the controller for it. So these are pretty conservative runs, just to give you an idea of what to expect. I think honestly, for my little mini bike, I think an 8,000 or a 6,000 watt motor might be the way to go. Maybe an 8,000. That'd be a pretty fun bike. Yeah, I would say that 12,000 watt motor is like a sweet spot. I really like that one a lot. And anything above that's just getting insanely fast. And even the 8,000 watt motor I could live with plenty fine. And if I was just going to have like a city cruiser or something to putz around on, I think like a 6,000 watt motor would be pretty nice for like something to have an electric moped. You'd probably get a lot of range out of that too.